So, Sunday night is the worst time to be prepared for something, especially at my house. I just unplugged my computer. Now I have to find the cord and get it plugged back in. We have a tradition at our house of all of our young adult grandchildren come to dinner. We have a collection of young adult grandchildren going to school and working in Utah County and San Pete County, and they come for Christmas Sunday dinner, and we love to have them. And today, old friends that lived in our neighborhood, that moved out of our neighborhood 20 or 30 years ago, also came to Sunday dinner, which distracted me from the time I got home to church until I left to come. So I'm having to take another deep breath and get my thoughts kind of in order. Tonight, and Trevor, I don't know if you didn't catch the news or what, but we're also having a special training meeting inside the Family History Center to teach people how to use our new high-speed scanner. We have a new high-speed scanner. Yes, Trevor, are you trying to say something?
Sorry, I am very, very sick and I didn't want to get anybody else sick. So
I saw you coughing a minute ago. Then I'm glad you didn't come. And I think that when you are working your regular shift at the Family History Center, that Richard can show you how to use the high-speed scanner.
That's what I was planning on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Meanwhile, get well. So our plan was that I would go teach my class tonight from the Family History Center instead of teaching it from my home. And I think at the end, we might take a couple of minutes and do if I can make my computer camera work, and take a little bit of a tour through the Family History Center. Tonight, we want to talk about censuses. And I'm gonna see if I can see how many people altogether are here tonight. I like to know who's here and how many of you there are. There's 5 of us. Okay. Joe Marie and Elizabeth Kelly, I don't believe I know you. Do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself? If you do, unmute. If you don't unmute, then we'll just tell you hello. Brother Bryant, are you in Arizona right now?
Yes, I am. This is northeastern part of Arizona. I'm from about 20 miles southwest from the known Canyon de Chelly National Monument.
I went to Canyon de Chelly once when we were on our mission. There are more petroglyphs in Canyon de Chelly than anywhere. It is just so absolutely beautiful and marvelous. And the part that has the most petroglyphs, you cannot go to unless you have a Navajo guide. Sister Kelly says, I've been in her class before. Okay, I'm sorry that I didn't remember you, but welcome tonight. And Sister Belen is here, and she is from our Native American ward. Brother Elliot. Yeah, there she is. Okay. And Angel Metzger is here. I'm glad to have all of you. Tonight, we're going to talk about the census. And there is so much information in censuses and so much to teach you about how to find the information that it cannot be taught in 1 hour. So I'm going to kind of teach it from by explaining to you what I have found in the census and the kind of information that applied to me and my family. Countries do censuses. The first census that the United States did, and it was by law, was in 1790. That was only 7 years after the Constitution of the United States was ratified by all of the colonies. And so every 10 years since then, the United States has wanted to know more about their citizens. I watched this week a 3-piece series that was taught at Roots Tech, and it was taught just on what's in the census, not necessarily family examples, but what's in the census. And if you want to know more, that was a wonderful, wonderful lesson. And the way that you find what was taught at Roots Tech, every class that was taught at Roots Tech this last year, and there were hundreds of them, are available on the internet. You look up Roots Tech Connect 2021, and then you have to navigate the site, but you can see it. So that's how you would do that. Other censuses have been, okay, so the United States took a census in 1790, 1800, 1810, 20, 1830, 1840, 1850, 60, 70, 80, 90, 1900, 1910, 1920, 30, and 40. They also took one in 50 and 60 and
Two Zoom classes.
they've also taken them since 1940, every 10 years. The last one that was released about 7 years ago, because there is also a law that says to protect the privacy of the people that are in the census, I'm going to take 1 minute. I'm going to do something. I'm going to go to security, and I think under security, I can do something that's called mute people, but I don't see where that is. Sister Kelly, do you know where it's at? It's not showing up under security. What Sister Kelly is suggesting to me on the chat thing is that in order to hide everybody in the next room that's talking, oh, I think the best way to mute them is to close the door. Oh, that ought to work. That ought to work. So now I have to get back my thoughts. Because everybody all of this background noise that we're having, I think, is coming from across the hall at the rest of the Family History Center. So federal law says that to keep the privacy of the people that are in the census, they cannot release the census until 72 years after it was taken. So that means that when the 1950 census was taken, it's going to be released 72 years after it was taken, which means that in 2022, in April, it will be released. The theory is that then everybody that was alive in 1850 is now dead. Well, I don't plan on being dead in 2 more years. So that is going to not hold true this time around. But it's still very interesting. Now, there are other censuses that are taken. The Bureau of Indian Affairs took a census several times of Native Americans that were living on certain reservations. Some territories that wanted to be made states took a census to prove that they had enough people living there that they could be a state. The United States wanted to know how many Confederate veterans there were. And so one year they took a census of everybody that had fought in the Civil War on the side of the Confederacy. Some years the government has wanted to know how many people were dying. And so they took a census of everybody that had died that year. And one of my great-grandmothers shows up as having died that year. They also wanted to take a census of how many Union soldiers were still alive. And so there's a census that some of my great-uncles are in, great-great-uncles, because they were still alive after having fought on the North side in the Civil War. So there are other censuses that have been taken. Other countries take censuses. England takes theirs every 10 years, but not ours takes them on the year that starts the decade. So like 2020 or 2010. The England takes them in the ones that the years that ended in number 1. So like 1841 and 1851. So why do genealogists worry about the census? The genealogists worry about the census because every 10 years, each family is asked certain questions, or each household is asked certain questions. So everybody that lives together in that house answers the questions, and the questions have varied a whole lot. One census, they ask you, what year did you become a citizen, or were you born a citizen? This year, they're not even allowing people to ask, are you a citizen? So each year it's different. I think that maybe a good way to start all this out is for me to mute your pictures, although I want you to each feel free to talk. I've got some more chats. I'm going to read what they are. You can mute to participants to eliminate background noise, but then you can't interrupt me and ask questions. So I'm going to let you still interrupt me and ask questions. Can I ask others to mute? Well, I want each of you not to be muted so you can ask me questions. So I think closing the door was our best answer. And is it quieter since we closed the door? Yes. Okay, very good. So I'm going to show my screen, and I'm going to start with a relatively recent census. I have a whole lot of censuses found. Let me see if I can pull up. Okay, this is not a recent census. I guess I better back up and give you some history. The first census, they just said, who are you? And how many people live in your house that are children and how many are adults? And it gave a little bit of year to year, although they never gave the census takers a form to fill out. And how many are women and how many are men? And that kind of was the same with just only slightly smaller age groups to choose from in the earlier censuses. 1850 was when censuses really became helpful. 1900 was when they really became helpful. And then probably about 2000 is when they started going downhill. This is a census, so I'm going to show you the 1880 census of Crawford County, Arkansas. Now, in this census, they had a form to fill out, and it asked lots of very good questions. And as you can tell, it's got lots of columns. So the first column is probably the name of your street, and then how many houses has the census taker already come to today? What is your name? What is your relationship? Where were you born? And so I'm going to come down here because I was looking for the family of Daniel Michael and his wife Jane. And according to somebody indexed this census, and it showed up in my hints as a possibility for Daniel Michael. And Daniel Michael all of a sudden left the rest of his family in Missouri, and some of them moved to Kansas, and he moved to I don't know where. And for years I didn't know where he had moved to or what had happened to him after he moved. I knew he was married to Jane, and I knew his only daughter's name was Sarepta. Now, Sarepta is an unusual name. So I was excited to see this indexed record. And I came and I looked at it. And can you see it? Let me try enlarging it one more time. Can you see here? I have Daniel Michael and Jane, and by now they're getting pretty old. One is a male, one is a female. It doesn't list. Oh, here it says that Daniel's the head of the household and Jane is his wife, and Jane Lillett is a servant. And so 59, they're starting to get kind of old. And next door to them lives William Shue. And his aunt is Mary, but it doesn't say, you assume that since it doesn't say her last name, that it's the same last name as the last name that was listed. And so her name would be Mary Shoup, and she was his aunt. And it doesn't say anything about her except that she's at home. So they didn't consider her the main housekeeper. And if we scroll over a bit, we can find out that Mary, the aunt, is from Missouri, and that her family's from Alabama, and that William is from Missouri. And then if we go on up to the previous household, we can see that Daniel was born in Virginia, and that matches what I know about Daniel, and that his wife was born in Missouri. But their daughter is no longer in the family, and her name is the unusual name of Sarepta. And I don't know what, sometimes I touch the wrong thing and that it enlarges it. But because I turned on my brain when I looked at the census, I noticed something interesting about the family that was living next door. Do any of you notice anything interesting about the family living next door? It's a Michael Fury, and it doesn't list him as the husband, but it lists a blank, so we know that he's the head of the household. And then what's his wife's name? Sarepta. How many Sareptas do you know? And then they have 3 children. One is 14 years old. Well, 3 children, 14 years old, 12 years old, and 2 years old. Now, how old would Sarepta have been? She's 36 now. How old would she have been when John was born? Is that 22? Okay, and Sarepta says that she was born in Missouri and that her father was born in Virginia and her mother was born in Missouri. Do you think that's Daniel's daughter, Sarepta? And do you think that after she married, she lived next door to her dad? Brother Elliot, you're the only one that hasn't turned off your picture, so you better smile and tell me, yes, that's what I think.
Still have a hard time reading cursive. I see
Oh,
this.
hard time reading cursive, and especially cursive that's 140 years old? Okay.
But down below is the type record.
Down below is the indexed
Yeah.
record. Okay, let's see if we can move the indexed record up a bit. Oh, I moved, it didn't, whatever I did didn't work. So let's come down to David Fury. Well, the typed record says that Michael Fury's wife's name is Luella. Now, because I have seen more handwriting maybe than the person that indexed it, or let's try to get it a little bit bigger and see what we can get. Now does it look a little bit more like it might be an S-E-R-E-P-T-A?
Yep.
Can you see it? Can you see it now better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Middle initials A.
And the initials A. And this, I think that's a W. And 36 years old and a wife and keeping house. And we would have to go to the very top of the page. I think that this means, can you read or write? I think we'd have to go up a bit and check that. Now, this says that Michael was born in London and his parents came from Ireland. Okay. So, I think that's very interesting. Now, I want to go back 10 years. And I thought that I had saved the census going back 10 years. Because if they lived in Crawford County, Arkansas in 1810, they very likely lived there in 1870. So I am going to go to, was that the 1870 we were just looking at?
1870.
I forget which one we just looked at. Let's look at this one and see if it's the same one. I don't think it's the same one, but let's enlarge it to see. So we're looking for Daniel Michael.
It's June of 1870.
Okay, June of 1870. And this one shows, this is interesting. Right away, I see Sarepta Farr, and she's keeping house. And I think if we were to go back and check the names of her children, we would find that these are the names of her children, but there's no husband anywhere to be seen. Which I still haven't figured that one out. I think that if we come further down the census, that we will find Daniel Michael. Maybe it's on the previous page and maybe it's on the far page. The way that you do that is you come up here to this little arrow sign, and that puts you one page faster, and then this is going to take you one page later. But I do remember that Daniel Michael was living near Sarepta. Okay, so that's 1870. Let's go clear back to 1860. Let's see if this one is, no, that's, okay. I've got too many indexes for them to give me all the details. So we've seen 1870. 1870 was just after the Civil War, and they lived in Arkansas. Where in Arkansas, or which, was Arkansas on the side of the Union or on the side of the Confederacy? I think the Confederacy. Okay, so now we're going to look at the 1860 census. And this time when I clicked on that, it pulled up a copy of information about what the index has to say. So I'm going to click on the image so we can see it. So 1860 is before the Civil War. And this one is interesting. Tell me how much I have to make it larger for you to be able to read it.
I can read it.
Can you read it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so Sarepta by now is only 17 years old. And look, she shows up quickly. And Daniel Michael is her father. And Eliza Jane is her mother. And they're born where they said, in Virginia and Missouri. And Sarepta was born in Missouri. And living with them is the same Polly Shoup. And living with them also is a David Michael. Now it calls him a farm laborer, but it sure makes me wonder if maybe he's a relative named Michael. Doesn't it make you wonder that? So Sarepta is living here. But look at what her neighbors' names are. Her neighbor's name is Michael Fury. Is that who her husband is in 2 more censuses? No. And he's married to Catherine. No, Catherine lives with them, and he's married to Catherine. One is 50 years old and one is 19, and he's 23. I think he's married to this Catherine. I wonder if maybe this is his mother-in-law. It doesn't tell us, does it? Maybe it's his mother, but the name Klaus makes you not sure. And John H. is 1 year old. John H. Fury. Well, John H. Fury is the child that was in the other censuses. So what do you think happened to the family of Michael Fury in the 10 years between this census and the next census? What is your suspicion?
His wife died and he married Sarepta.
I think his wife died.
You think Michael's wife died?
Yeah.
Leaving him with a son, John?
Yeah.
I wonder who helped him take care of John. I wonder what happens to a widower with a baby to take care of that has a 17-year-old girl living next door. Do you think that's a situation ripe for romance? I think so. Because somebody indexed the marriage record, I have the marriage record showing Michael Fury marrying Sarepta Michael. And from now on, John is the oldest child in that family. And the others are just barely older than the next two children. So in this census, we found that, or in this series of censuses, that Daniel moved from Missouri to Arkansas. You know, here's something I'd forgotten. I had forgotten this. Michael Fury is living in Missouri. And so is Daniel Michael. I had forgotten that Michael Fury was living in Missouri. They didn't get married in either Missouri or Arkansas. They got married in some strange place. I don't remember, but it was not either of those. Now, I still don't have some of the other answers. Polly, by searching in Family Search, I have found that Polly Shoup is the sister to Philip Shoup. And Philip's wife dies and leaves him with a baby named William. And from then on, William lives with Polly. Polly lives with the Michaels. And when the Michaels move, Philip buys their land. But I haven't been able to find any relationship between Daniel and Polly. But it's interesting that Daniel and Polly, maybe Sarepta, well, Sarepta's not the same age bracket as Polly, but nonetheless, Polly moves with the family, and in those following censuses, William Shoup lives next door or nearby with his Aunt Polly living near them. So I think there's some kind of a relationship that I haven't found yet between Polly and Philip and Daniel Michael. And maybe someday I'll figure that out. But we got lots of clues about things by reading these censuses. Okay, now let's drop back to the very beginning. Let's go to 1790 census. This is the 1790 census. And you can see that it does not tell us very much. And it doesn't even have a form for the census taker to fill out. But if I come down and it has been indexed, here's Christian Michael, and it's on page 330. And it did tell us that this was page 330. And I don't want to take too much of our lesson time to talk about each, to search for things I can't find easily. But you see, all it told us about him was how many males, how many females, and how many children in the family. But that gave the government what they needed to know, and it helps me confirm that by 1790, Christian Michael had moved from Philadelphia, where he got married, to Rowan County, North Carolina. Now I can look 10 years later, well, this is 20 years later, in Muhlenberg County, Kentucky. Now this has been indexed now. When I first looked, it wasn't indexed, and I had to search through all the different counties till I found them. But here is Christian's son, John. Can you see John Michael here? And I don't recognize the people that he lives nearby, but here he is, and it lists that he has 2 children under 10 years old and 1 child over 10 years old, and all the way across. And so one of the things I did after finding John in Muhlenberg, Kentucky, is I thought, I'm going to look and see if he bought any land. And he bought land. And a very interesting thing is his 14-year-old son bought land, and his 14-year-old son's name was Hugh, And so that proved to me that this, in fact, was my John Michael, son of Christian. But it was the clue that I got by finding him in the census. And now that the censuses have been indexed, it is so wonderful because we can find these people this easily. Now, when I first started doing family history, it was not indexed. And it was but the church had gone through most of the counties and had microfilmed them. And so the microfilm was on a roll about this big of film, and you'd hook it into the reader and you would turn a crank page by page by page and read images that looked very similar to this image. And you would have to look page by page, row by row, till you found what you were looking for. Now that they're indexed, you can go right to the very page. And so now I have proof that John Michael and his son Hugh lived in Muhlenberg County, Kentucky, but not for very long. Now, the people in Kentucky often wanted to go further west, and they went to Illinois. So here, well, I want to see if I can find the 1830 census. Do I have it easily found? No, I don't have it easily found. So let's go ahead and look at the did I find the 1840 census? No, so we're going to go ahead and look at the 1850 census. So by now they have moved from Illinois to Missouri. And when I search the Missouri census, I find it very interesting. All of their children's in-laws moved with them at the same time they moved to Missouri. Now, at this time, they're not all married to those people yet. But let's take a look at who I find. Here is Daniel Michael, so this is 1850, with his wife Eliza and his daughter Sarepta, and Mary Shupard lives next door to them. I mean, with them. Then, if I come further down the census, I find Edward Michael. And Edward Michael is married to Lucy, and they have a baby and a newborn. And if I go one page over, at the top of the page, I find John Michael married to Sally. So this is the same John Michael that we found in Muhlenberg County, but now we know his wife is Sarah. And we can follow through on their ages and watch them progress 10 years older each time. And so John was born in North Carolina, where we saw them in that earlier census. And he is a shoemaker. Now that is a very interesting clue for me to find out about it. So this is the first census that tells where you were born. So he was born in North Carolina, but his brother Daniel was born in Virginia. They lived right across the border from the borders. And in fact, in order to get across the Cumberland Gap, you had to go through Virginia. So they went through the Cumberland Gap, but they just lived in Virginia for a little while. So here is Daniel, and so he's of the right age to be the son of John, but the very youngest son. Edward is 22, and it does not tell us what relationship he is to John, but John's a shoemaker and Edward is a shoemaker. Did it tell us what Daniel was? Daniel's a farmer. All of them farmed, and I can tell that by looking at the land records. So if I also had looked at the house number, this is how many houses did the census taker have to go to? John and Sarah are living in the house with Edward. Or maybe Edward and Lucy are living with their grandparents because they're newlyweds. So maybe they're helping on the farm. But they are both shoemakers. Now, as I have been searching this family in the census, I found out that Whitaker was a hatter, and hatters are almost the same. They use the same techniques as shoemakers do. Hugh is a shoemaker. John is a shoemaker. A whole bunch of boys within the same age bracket as Hugh and Daniel, they're all either shoemakers or hatters. Now the census doesn't say all of your neighbors with the same last name are your relatives, but since they all have the same unusual occupation of shoemaker and hatter, it gives me a clue that they are in fact brothers. Okay, so that was the 1850 census. So this is the first census that lists every single person living in the house. And by following through the rest of the census, I can find the other brothers. So here's the 1840 census that I didn't find a minute ago. Here's John Michael, the very first person on the list. And you see it breaks down age by age how many people there are living in that age group living with him. And so I can see that there are 2 older people and lots of children. Well, only 1 daughter, 3 boys. So that was how the 1840 census looked. This 1830 census, there he is again. So we've watched kind of, although I've jumped around, we've watched the family from when the census only listed a little bit, they call those tick marks, a little bit about how many people are in the family that year. Then the next census increased how many people in different age groups. And we've watched that flow through as they moved from North Carolina to Kentucky to Illinois to Missouri. And that is called a migration pattern. And if you search, a lot of people follow that same migration pattern to get to Missouri. Now, the 1890 census had all kinds of wonderful information in it, and it burned. All of those census books were in the care of the Commerce Department, right close to the White House in Washington, D.C., and it burned down. They saved a few odd records, but not very many. So we do not have an 1890 census. But we do have a 1900 census. And that's when they start asking more questions and getting more information. So I went to my grandpa and I looked at some of the censuses that he is in. And so I'm going to start with the 1920 census that he's in. And my grandpa is Mark Wilden. He never spelled his name Marcus, but apparently the census taker did. His wife was Gladys. He was 27, she was 24, and they had a daughter that was 5, and my mother was barely 4 years old. And they live in Montezuma County precinct. And if I go up to the top of the page, Montezuma County, if I go up to the top of the page, I can find out that they live in, a big page, that they lived in Mancos, precinct 10, which I think it was going to tell me somewhere is in Mancos, Colorado. Now, again, I get family clues. Here up on the page is Matthew. Is Matthew related to him? They're both born in England. And here's William. He was born in Utah. And he's got a large family. Coming on down, I find John. Now, if I look in the county history of Montezuma County, Colorado, I find out that Mancos Town was kind of split in half. There was the part of the half of the town that was settlers that were sent by Brigham Young to Bluff, Utah, who didn't like Bluff, Utah, so they moved on to Mancos, Colorado. And then the other half were regular settlers. So one half of the town is Mormons, and one half of the town isn't Mormon. So if I have a lot of Wilden families living mixed together, so they're probably, if they're from Utah, they're probably in the Mormon half of town. These Wildens are probably relatives. And as I keep track of each one of them, I can find out more about that. Now, the way that the indexing worked on this particular record, they only put up this page. They don't put up the arrow page. They don't put up the next page, so I can't go to it. The next page would show that in addition to my mother being 4 years old, they had a son that was 3 years old and a son that was a baby. So they had 4 children, with the oldest one being 5. That's pretty close together to have 4 children. I also notice here that, so this is my grandfather, my great, I guess I have to go to a different census. Another census lists John's father, John, and you can tell from it, maybe it's even farther up on this page, that that great grandmother came from Denmark. So they were converts to the church from Denmark, and then they went to Utah. Then Brigham Young sent them to Bluff, which they didn't like. So they moved to Mancos, Colorado. It's interesting. The mission president of Bluff didn't like it. So he moved to Mancos, Colorado. But so there is the census showing my mother when she was 4.5 years old. I don't remember if I found the census showing my mother when she was 14 years old, but by then she is living with a stepmother and more brothers and sisters. Her mother died a year after this census was taken. Let's just see which other ones I have, if I have any others showing my grandpa. No, I don't. The 1920 census, the 1930 census, which I didn't pull up, also shows each woman how many children she had and how many of those children are still alive. That is really going to help us if we're making a family group sheet and we don't know how many children. Now, and I don't think I pulled up Hugh in 1860. Let me see if I can find Hugh in 1860 pretty quickly, because if I can, or 1870 probably would have worked too. It's going to show me how many children he had in his family. At least it's going to do a pretty good job of showing me how many children. And so we already found the 1 year where the oldest son, or who I think is the oldest son, is living with the grandpa. Here we have, look how many children they have now. The oldest one living at home is, I think that's George, is 26. And then they have this many more children. Now, as I search the census of who I think his children are, I find more. And so if I compare the children he had in 1850 and 1860 and 1870, I can get a full list of his children, except for the ones that died between the years the census was taken. When I finally got his obituary, I find out they had 3 more children that never showed up in a census. But see, I have been able to put together family group sheets, all kinds of family group sheets from this family, from these families by reading the censuses. Some of the fun things that you can find out from a census, if you go further, is the 1930 census also asked if you had a radio. So radios were pretty new back in 1930s. My mother's family loves music. My uncles all play the guitar. My grandpa played the piano and the guitar. In fact, it's very fun. We have, if I go to look up my grandpa and I look under memories and I look up him, I can find an audio tape that somebody has put in of my grandpa singing. So my mother's family loved music and they had a radio. Across town, my mother's family lived in the Mormon side of town. Across town in the non-Mormon side of town, where my dad's family lived, they didn't have a radio, but they had a bigger farm. I think my grandpa Everett worked his kids harder, and instead of listening to music, they were too tired at night and they went to bed. So I think that having a radio to me has been an interesting thing. The clues you can get from censuses are just so valuable. Brother Elliot, have you ever looked at the Indian censuses to find your family?
Yes, I did. Quite an extensive hobby I've done for several months. For example, my maternal grandmother's used to stay with her maternal grandpa his English name, English translation would say no hat brigade. But the census roll 1915, 1929 to 1937, they spell his official name Richard Denny Brigade. I was looking through the census records and I believe I found one of Richard Denny Brigade's daughter named Richard Denny Bitsy Gorman. I believe that her daughter, my grandmother, was one of the aunt, might have married a Gorman family in Chinle. There's a large family, Gorman family, that live here, and I think there's only one lady, one female that is named Denny Gorman at the entire Southern Navajo census from 1929 to 1937. There's only two names that comes out, Denny Brigade, two different individuals. I've yet to know if they're related to each other. The other name that comes up is three names. There's a grandson, which is my grandmother's cousin or relation. His name used to be Chadani Benali. That's his paternal relationship. It means in Navajo. That was the same household with the grandfather, my grandmother's. Well, they didn't have big houses back then. It was just a real small hogan or structure. He had no hat because he was from Hopi. His clan is the Lester Ayakini. That's the official original terminology. They don't call it Kisani. That's not the term that they use. It was called Ayakini, the term they use for Hopi clan. That's Denny Brigade's first clan.
So you have found them and that gave you written proof that they were relatives.
Yes, it's on record. Yeah,
What?
I have resident information. My grandmother's maiden name. That they go by Indian census numbers. That each assigned numbers. They match. Until my grandmother was married to my grandpa in 1936. And they had children since 1936.
Okay.
I found all the birth certificates too of my aunts and uncles on mom's side. I have all of them
Wonderful.
on this ancestry.com. I found all of them. I print them out.
Oh, they have Navajo birth certificates?
It's under Arizona state of Arizona census. They've been taking birth certificate information since 1940s.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Have you ever looked in the Doris? Oh, I can't think. Doris, somebody did a research project of collecting stories from old Navajos. Have you ever been able to look at those?
No. Where?
Oh, we have the index. We have the index here in our Family History Center. I don't remember the name. Charles, would you go look? It's on the bookcase in the bottom shelf in the other room. Doris, somebody's something. I'm sending my husband in to look. It was a wonderful project she did. I forget if she went to school at the University of Utah or if she worked at the University of Utah. But she got some wonderful histories, and those who have been able to find their families in those histories are lucky and are very pleased at what they've been able to find.
I have yet to find my maternal grandmother's official parents' English name. I'm unable to find both names. I can only go by all the stories. My maternal grandmother's Navajo name, the mom died when my grandma was only around 12 or 13. The great grandma was named Asan. Was the name. There is conflict with one of my cousins. They say it differently. They have different names, but I really don't agree with them. My cousin's family side, because I go by what my mom was interviewed with that medicine man. Look, that was the same guy that lived with my grandma. The grandpa was named. You go by clan. He was from Minigoat's clan. I've never seen that.
Clan.
Yeah, that's the first time I've seen that. I've never seen that before.
Well, do you ever come to Provo? I think we would have to have the written words, the written names of your family, but they are mostly reel-to-reel tapes, and some of them have been changed to CD copies. But I think, and they're listed by what's on each reel. So I've never looked up anybody myself because I don't have any Navajo relatives. But that's something I think maybe it's worth researching. Does it on Ancestry or does BYU have it microfilmed or something like that?
Yeah.
But that is a good Navajo resource. Our library here, because of our Native American ward, has lots of BA Indian records on microfilm, but we don't have a microfilm reader anymore. So it's a microfilm reader without a lens. How would you use a census record? I think that what people should do with my husband's trying to tell me I'm over time almost. Yeah. I can always tell him when he starts wiggling that I'm running out of time.
I have a question.
Oh, he has a question. What's your question?
How do we find the census?
Okay. So my husband wants to know how we find the census. First of all, he interrupted my thought.
You're welcome.
So I'll have to tell you how to find the census records. First of all, look on Family Search to see if there are any census records that somebody else has already attached to your relative. Then go to search on Family Search. And so you go to search, you go to records, and this gives you a basic, this is called a template, a basic template, and you put down check by type, and then further down here, you click search by census, and then you do search. Or else over here where it says collection title, you can type United States Census and the state that you want. So like for Chinle, Arizona, you would say United States Census, Arizona, Chinle. You can do the same on Ancestry. If you go to Ancestry and do a search on Ancestry, you're going to get a basic search. Well, first of all, you're going to do search. Then you're going to choose censuses, and then you're going to do the search. And you don't tell them every single thing you know. You tell them a little bit, and then you add a little bit more, or you take out a little bit. So maybe if I was looking for my grandpa, Mark Wilden, I would put that. I would put down the year he was born. I think it was 1895. And then I would put lived in, and I would put down Mancos, Colorado. Maybe I would put down that his father's name was John. But you fill in that form and do a search, and that's how you find them. Because they have been indexed, and because we have leaves on Ancestry, and we have hints on Family Search. Let's see if Hugh Michael has a hint. I don't think he does, but if he had a hint here, somebody at some time said, oh, here's a hint for Hugh Michael. Let me see if it looks like him. And they attached that census. So a lot of times nowadays, we don't even have to do all the searching ourselves because we find it. But when we find it, we should attach it to everybody. So for example, if I find Daniel Michael in the census and I know that who Polly Shoup is, I should make sure that I attach Polly Shoup to that same record so that when somebody is looking for Polly Shoup, they can find her in the census. Now, it appears that Polly Shoup never married, never had any children. The only child she ever took care of was that one nephew of hers. But when you attach a census record, you want to make sure you attach it to everybody so that somebody else will have that hint of who they are. So if I was searching the census for the first time, I would start out by looking for my mother. Then I would look for my grandfather. Then I would look for him every single year. Then I would look for his father and look for his father every single year. And I would follow it through. And because I'm old and I still think on paper better than I think on the computer screen, I would print out all of those censuses and I would use a red pencil to circle anything that was particularly interesting. Like, why does Mary Shoup keep living with Daniel and Michael? I would circle her name to help me remember that I'm looking for that. And I would maybe even get a map and follow where they lived in the different censuses so I could follow their path of migration, because maybe other people in their family followed that same path of migration. Like, I'm still curious why Daniel moved to Arkansas when the rest of his brothers and nephews and nieces moved to Kansas. I'm curious about that. And I don't have an answer for that yet. People are right to think that in the United States, censuses are the gold mine. And it's about the first thing that we should do first after talking to relatives and getting everything we can from our relatives. Because our relatives know more than we think, and it needs to be written down. I finally found out the whole list of who all of Hugh Michael's siblings were, and so who all of John Michael's children were, because somebody talked to the oldest lady in the family and she wrote it all down for them. And so we have in her writing the list of, oh, and so your grandfather was, your great-grandfather was John Michael, and these are his children. And this is the list of Hugh's children, except I think he had some more boys than this. And so it is, the census is what we do first after we talk to family. And then we start with other things like vital records and other government records. Certainly for Navajos, the Bureau of Indian Affairs records are going to be very valuable. And my husband's record family in Oklahoma, one of the first records that we do for them is the records from when you enroll your kids in school. Because if a man enrolls 6 kids in school, we know he's got at least 6 kids in his family and who they are. So, but censuses are the gold mine. So if anybody looks in the census this week and finds something interesting, please post it. I was going to say email me, but the easier thing would be to post it on the Facebook page called Provo South and Freedom Family History Center. Okay, any further questions? Okay, Helen, if you can hear me, I know you're in the other room where they're showing how to use the scanner, but if you can hear me, would you please say the closing prayer? If you unmute yourself, I know you can hear me and that you're able to listen right now. Okay, Sister Helen probably couldn't hear me right then. So Trevor, would you please say our closing prayer? Great. By the way, Trevor's getting ready to go to Albuquerque on his mission.
What?
Did I remember right?
Albuquerque?
No, somebody else is going to Albuquerque. Where are you going?
Yeah, sorry. I'm going to the Dominican Republic.
Oh, they're nowhere near close.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It would be a lot more comfortable to go to Albuquerque, I think, because I like cold weather, but
Albuquerque's not much colder
oh,
than the Dominican Republic, I don't think. Angel's husband went to the Dominican Republic,
okay.
I think.
Yeah.
I-
Yes,
I-
Ben went to the Dominican.
Oh, cool. Well, sorry, I thought Albuquerque was in Canada for a second.
No, Albuquerque is
New
in New
Mexico, I remember
Mexico.
now. Yeah.
right almost across the state from Chinle, Arizona.
I see.
Nancy,
Yes.
I had a rough time getting back on Zoom. Look at the chat, and you can find an article in Family Search Wiki, how to find Native American ancestors using the 20th century US censuses. There's an article there that Elliot can read. Can you see it on the chat?
I don't see anything.
Can you, do you know how to use the chat, Elliot?
Yeah, but I don't see it.
No, I don't see it either. Helen,
Oh, okay, hold on.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook.
Okay, there it
You
is.
can, yeah, you
oh,
can put it
there
on.
it is.
You can put it on Facebook on page 2 on Provo South and Freedom Family
Yes.
page 2.
So Helen, would you please do that? Would you also please put it on the Family History Center Facebook page?
I'll see what I can do. But
Okay,
anyways,
that's the one, that's our Family History Center's Facebook page. But so there's
Oh.
a special article on this special part of Family Search called the Wiki. And you find the Wiki by going to search, and then you go to Research Wiki, and it's got so many articles about so many things you can't even believe it. So
Nancy,
one of the articles is how to find Native American ancestors using the 20th century US censuses.
do you want to go ahead and click on Research Wiki? And then just
Okay.
begin typing how to find in the search bar, how to find Native American, and the title should pop up right there.
Yeah, I can find out.
Yeah. And there it
So-
is.
So here's an article.
And it walks you through the research process and using how to use the censuses, both the federal census and the Bureau of Indian Affairs census records, which is the Indian census rolls.
And it's got a whole lot of information here.
Yes.
So Helen is our expert at our Family History Center on Native American. Helen,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about you. What's your clan and where's your hometown in Arizona?
My ancestors lived in the Four Corners area in New Mexico. And I did my research on all of my lines and served a mission at the Family History Library for 2.5 years after I retired from teaching. And now I live in Utah.
She's a wonderful resource for us. The reason, if you noticed, I mentioned clans. When you meet a Navajo on the reservation and they're introducing themselves to you, they will tell you what their clan is.
Yes.
Which family of Navajos did they come from? And they will tell you their mother's clan, and then they will also tell you what clan their father was. And so that shows that how much they value family history and their relatives. I used to try to figure out what should I say, what should I invent for my clan? Should I say that my clan crossed the Appalachian Mountain Crossers because we crossed the Appalachian Mountains? Or should I just say Mormon pioneers, or what should I invent for my clan? And I never did figure out a good one.
October 16th, we're hoping to do a presentation on this.
Okay, brother Bryant, this is for you, Elliot. On October 18th,
16 on a Saturday.
we are having a whole Saturday morning on Native American research with specialists from Salt Lake and Helen and others coming to talk specifically about Native American research. And I think that we could try to get that on Zoom or else on DVD or something, so that we could put it on YouTube, so you could watch it if you're interested. So if you
Okay.
want to do that, you have, and we don't have the final date. We have the building reserved, but we still have a couple of details.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, also tell us that on the Facebook page so that we can make sure we remember that and try to get a hold of you before it happens.
Okay.
Okay,
October 16th.
okay. Um,